A string of vicious bank robberies grows more violent with every holdup, then ends in a deadly shootout. With a dangerous man on the run, police conduct an all-out search for a fugitive so desperate he will stop at nothing to make his escape.
Two armed bank robbers hit a Seattle bank, taking over $150,000. But before they can escape, police confront them and the pair splits up. As authorities search block by block, they learn one was a career criminal with a long history of violence. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The suspect was smart and desperate to stay free. Agents chased him through the Caribbean and across cyberspace, determined to put an end to his career.
One of the FBI's primary responsibilities is investigating bank robberies. And they see more of these crimes in Seattle than just about any other place in the country. The FBI office there investigates every bank robbery in the state of Washington. Special Agent Mike Adams runs Seattle's robbery division.
Over the last 5 or 6 years, we've averaged 300 bank robberies a year, primarily here in the Seattle or King County area. Bank robberies are a big problem here in this area.
The FBI cites a high rate of drug addiction and the fact that Washington has a relatively large number of bank branches as reasons for this. The Seattle agents see two basic types of bank heists. Most are one-on-one robberies, when someone approaches a teller with a note and a quiet demand for cash.
Not necessarily a robber who cares to draw attention to him or herself by being extremely vocal or attempting to take over the banking operations.
The other kind of robbery is more rare and more dangerous. The takeover.
A takeover robbery is where we have one or more robbers who enter a bank and attempt to take over the banking operations through various means, either ordering people to the floor or ordering bank employees away from the teller counters. More often than not, in a takeover-style bank robbery, the bank robber or robbers are armed with firearms. So those are considered very violent as opposed to a one-on-one style bank robbery.
Agents note that whenever takeover bandits get away with it, they will usually rob again, becoming bolder and more violent with each new attempt. On May 17, 2000, one particularly vicious string of takeover-style robberies begins at a downtown Seattle bank.
Hurry up! All of it, all of it. I will shoot you right now, lady. I ain't playing with you. Get that.
Working quickly, they disappear in minutes with thousands of dollars in cash. A week later, thieves hit another area bank, brandishing bigger guns, intensifying their assault on unsuspecting patrons and employees. 2 weeks later, robbers strike again with even more aggression. Since takeover robberies are rare, agents believe the crimes were all perpetrated by the same bandits.
We did see bank robberies that did appear to be similar in nature in terms of the level of violence, in terms of large amounts of money. Certainly, a robbery of that nature is going to pique our attention because of the significant level of violence.
Yet each time, the robbers escape cleanly in stolen getaway cars, leaving no eyewitnesses who can ID the men. The FBI is facing a pair of seasoned criminals who grow more aggressive with each attack. Recognizing a pattern of behavior, authorities feel these violent robbers will turn deadly. 6 days later, on the morning of June 22nd, 2000, their worst fears are realized. Two men head down Aurora Avenue, then turn into the parking lot of Wells Fargo Bank. The people inside have no idea what's coming. The gunmen corral the customers and employees, but they miss one. The robbers are organized. One stands guard, while the other finds a teller who can access the vault.
I'm asking you, do you have the key to the vault?
Don't look at me! Get over there!
The manager connects with police emergency.
Stay on the line. All units, we've had a bank robbery at 120 in Aurora.
A dispatcher puts out an urgent call about armed robbers still inside the bank.
204 received.
Seattle officer Wesley Buxton responds.
It was a bank robbery in progress. That's a little bit of an unusual call. We usually get bank alarms as opposed to bank robbery in progress.
Buxton races to the bank.
I said hurry up! Yeah. Come on, here, fill it up. Hurry up!
Inside the vault, the thief takes all the cash his two backpacks can hold. The teller follows orders, hoping the gunman won't kill him.
No phone calls or nothing, you understand me? None of that!
Buxton kills his siren as he approaches the bank.
I was the first one on the scene. There was a motorcycle sitting out in front of the bank. I believe it was up on the sidewalk. You really couldn't see in the bank.
Following procedure, the officer finds cover and waits for backup. Officer Rick Sprecher arrives and gets into position. The bandits emerge, unaware of the officers. They cannot get the motorcycle started.
They sat there like they were frozen for a minute in time, I guess trying to figure out why the motorcycle wouldn't start. And then they jumped off the motorcycle and they started running away from it.
Then, one suspect trips.
I had my gun on him and told him to stay down.
Buxton stays with the first gunman. Officer Sprecher orders the second to stop. But the man disappears. Then Officer Buxton is suddenly faced with the unthinkable.
It seemed like slow motion. I've heard the tape recording of it and the shots were fired in quick succession. But at that time, it seemed like there were even maybe 1 or 2 seconds between the actual shots.
Sprecher returns fire, finally stopping the gunman. Officers contain one suspect. The other is gone.
Got an officer down! Officer down! I need backup!
Officer Sprecher's call brings an intense law enforcement response. Emergency medical technicians work to stabilize Officer Buxton, while Officer Sprecher quickly briefs detectives.
got shot 6 times. I muttered on him. Guys lose.
The man who shot the officer is dead.
Black jacket.
The hunt for the escaped suspect begins immediately.
One suspect at large, black helmet, black clothing.
A dispatcher broadcasts a description of the fleeing gunman on all police channels. FBI agents rush to the bank. Among them, Agent Mike Adams.
On my way to the bank, I did hear an officer was shot and was down. It was obviously a very violent takeover-style robbery.
Adams recognizes that these initial reports are similar to the 3 earlier robberies and that the violence has escalated even further. With one armed gunman still on the loose, authorities quickly moved to contain the situation.
There were several people, bystanders, who were beginning to gather around. So Seattle police immediately took control of the scene because of the imminent danger and potential threat that still existed.
The Seattle Police Department directs their homicide unit to the scene, including Detective Paul Seguro.
Anytime there's officer-involved shooting where a Seattle police officer fires a weapon, we are called to investigate.
All law enforcement agencies begin working together to develop a plan to find the escaped gunman. Seattle police form an emergency command post to coordinate the effort.
Their assignment. Let's wrap it up right now. Take off, all right?
Members of our SWAT team had already started a search of the inner perimeter area.
Moving toward the general direction of the fleeing suspect, SWAT methodically searches every hiding space. They are careful, knowing that the gunman is desperate and could be anywhere.
Let's go! Let's go!
Concerned for public safety, law enforcement swarms the area. Roads are blocked, traffic rerouted. Detective Sergeant David Ritter.
The bank robbery and subsequent police shooting led to a tremendous police presence in the area. We had dogs, we had the King County helicopter, the special weapons team.
The SWAT team goes door to door, warning everyone in the business district.
Businesses were shut down. We closed all the local businesses for the safety of the people because the suspect was still at large.
Okay, you guys are right. Just do that, please. Thank you.
After treating gunshot wounds in Officer Buxton's left arm and right shoulder, the emergency medical technicians take him to the hospital.
Both wounds, the bullet went in and out, so it was just a matter of cleaning it up and make sure there wasn't anything that would cause any kind of infection.
Special Agent Adams searches the downed bank robber for clues.
I pulled out his identification, which said his name was Daniel Del Fierro. He was not someone that, known to the FBI at that time, but nonetheless, certainly a name for us to conduct further follow-up investigation.
Investigators locate the .380 semi-automatic handgun used to shoot Buxton. In a belt pack, they find a .38 revolver. Agents also recover 2 backpacks full of cash.
A lot of the money in there was still in shrink wrap, delivered from the Federal Reserve Bank. Later, the money found in both backpacks came up to well over $151,000. That is a lot of money, much more than is typically taken during a bank robbery.
Police run the plates of the motorcycle and learn it will not help them ID the escaped suspect. The bike was stolen. FBI agents interview bank employees and customers, searching for clues that might help them locate the second gunman. But the robbers never used any names, and no one saw their faces. An evidence technician recovers a footprint left on the teller counter. But it is the only physical evidence investigators find at the scene. The heist was clean. Local police pull up the record of the dead robber, Daniel Del Fierro. He was fresh out of prison, having served time for manslaughter and assault. Police continue to hunt down Del Fierro's accomplice. Within hours of the robbery, they pick up his trail. Detectives respond to a nearby junkyard where officers have recovered evidence.
We are backtracking, finding the items of evidence that were discarded. As he's running, he's getting rid of his motorcycle he had on, gloves. It's sort of like the trail that he left behind. And he continues running probably another 50 feet. And then took off his jacket. There's a high chain link fence and barbed wire on top of that. There's also a handgun, a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol covered close to the jacket.
Investigators suspect that the gunman was covering his trail by leaving behind evidence and any clothing that would later identify him. But just as the suspect's trail appears to be getting cold, it heats up again.
Zero. I'll be right there. Gotta go.
Investigators head to a nearby apartment building, responding to a call made by the building's manager.
Excuse me, ma'am. You don't want to call the police earlier.
She had called police after finding fresh blood outside an apartment.
Anything unusual? Went upstairs to my apartment and noticed the blood on the stairwell.
Did you see any?
We surmise that the second suspect must have cut his hand going over the fence.
If it is the gunman's blood, he could still be in the building, armed and desperate. Police call for SWAT.
All right, secure the perimeter. We'll get you to a safe spot.
And a nearby team arrives immediately. With a dangerous and elusive gunman still on the loose, police hope they now have him cornered. Following a Seattle bank robbery in June 2000, a gun battle leaves one police officer injured and one suspect dead. A second armed suspect flees on foot and disappears. Police follow a blood trail to a nearby apartment building. Thinking the gunman might be holed up there, a SWAT team checks the place, one hallway, one apartment at a time.
Clear at the top, come
on! But they find nothing. Once the building is cleared, investigators secure a sample of the blood for later testing. Authorities pour every resource into the intense manhunt, according to Detective Sergeant David Ritter.
Because of the seriousness of the robbery, every available officer that we could find was involved in this hunt for the second suspect.
Police are cautious, knowing from experience that someone willing to shoot a cop is far more dangerous than the average criminal. FBI agents approach residents, asking them what they've seen and warning them about the fugitive.
The suspect was obviously very dangerous, and the people in the immediate area were afraid.
Tactical officers continue to check buildings, alleys, any place the suspect could hide.
Clear, clear, let's go, next one.
They instruct every business in a 15-block area to shut down and lock up.
Okay, all right, thanks.
In no time, authorities seal off one of Seattle's busiest shopping districts, bringing the entire area to a standstill. Investigators have identified the suspect killed during the shootout as Danny Del Fiero. He is the investigators' best lead for locating the second robber. King County Deputy Prosecutor Steve Fogg.
So we got an immediate warrant for his residence, his car, to try to locate whatever information we could about him, and through that, who he might have done the crime with.
At Del Fiero's home, investigators meet a woman who had lived with him. She says she knows nothing about the robbery, but helps them compile a list of her housemates' associates.
We're trying to solve a crime here. Man, listen, I understand you're uptight about it.
Investigators then search Del Fiero's home, but find nothing that can help them identify the escaped suspect. Across town, officers respond to a call from a man who claims he was the target of an attempted carjacking. It is just north of the building where the blood was found.
Well, I was leaving for work, and
The driver explains that minutes earlier, he was leaving his apartment complex.
All of a sudden, he saw this guy jump out in front of him and slam both of his hands down on the hood and force him to stop. The guy said, "Hey, I've been in a fight, and I need you to help me. Can you give me a ride?"
Look, I need your car. Just come
The
on.
man became more aggressive.
He put his hand into the car, tried to grab the keys, and tried to take the car himself. When it became apparent that that was not going to work, he became quite vicious, within a matter of seconds. The owner of the car was able to fight him off, push him out the door, and then just jet off as fast as he could. He reported what had happened to a police officer.
yeah, the guy was like,
Police are convinced the carjacker is the robber they're pursuing. The victim gives them a detailed description of his assailant and the direction he was going.
He was moving to the north, so that moved the search in that direction. We got the description out immediately, and the media was helpful, and they got it out to the public as fast as we had it.
For 3 hours, investigators find no sign of the fugitive until a 911 operator gets a call.
My wife and I, we've been mugged.
A man reports that he and his wife had been held hostage that afternoon. The intruder had fled, but they think he was the bank robber they heard about on the news.
Yes, the one that robbed the bank.
Investigators race to a residence north of the carjacking attempt. The couple explains what happened. 3 hours earlier, the woman was leaving her house when she saw a man in her truck. He was calm and told her he'd been in a fight and needed her help. She didn't fall for it.
At this point, the police and the media were sort of circling the area, and she pointed up to the helicopters and said, "No, I think actually they're looking for you." And again, the personality changed just like that. The woman is not somebody who's just going to kind of roll over for this guy.
She tried to fight back.
He grabbed a knife, let her know that he was capable of using it. He signaled to her that his own survival was at stake and he was going to be as brutal as he had to be.
Get in. Where's the tape? Tell me right now, where's the tape? Do you have any rope? Don't move.
As he searched for something with which to tie her up, her husband came home.
Honey! Honey! Where are you? Hey! I'm home. Honey, what's going on?
The husband then tried to intervene on behalf of his wife, and this guy punched him.
Stop moving. Stop moving. Give me your hands. Give me your hands. I will
At this
kill you.
point, they were just doing what they needed to do to survive, and so they said, I think they felt like if they were tied up, at least they wouldn't be shot or anything like that.
The couple could hear the assailant making calls on his cell phone in another room.
2434 Campbell Road. Knock on the window, okay?
Then he calmly got a beer from the refrigerator and began watching accounts of his own robbery on television. He seemed transfixed by live images of the extensive manhunt.
About 2.5, 3 hours after they were tied up, there was a knock on the window, and he sort of ran out the door, and that was the last they ever saw of him.
By the time police respond, it's clear the suspect has slipped through their dragnet.
Once we interviewed the people in the house, then it was pretty obvious that he had gotten away. The intensive search ended when it was obvious that he had fled the scene and he had had some help from somebody else, probably a car. So the actual physical search of the area was pretty much stopped at that time.
Investigators processed the entire house, collecting fingerprints and blood samples. They hope the evidence will help them identify a dangerous criminal. A man who will do anything to escape the law. An armed bank robber is on the run, following a deadly shootout in which police kill his partner. During his flight, the fugitive assaults a couple. then holds them hostage in their Seattle home while he waits for a getaway driver to help him escape. FBI Special Agent Gary Shainline knows this fugitive is especially dangerous.
The nature of the act itself of bank robbery is very violent, but in trying to effect an escape, his partner and he were involved in the shooting of a police officer and also the taking hostage of innocent citizens. So the stakes in this particular case were definitely higher.
Detective Paul Seguro begins canvassing the neighbors of the slain robber, Danny Del Fiero. One man tells Seguro he had seen television reports about the stolen motorcycle used in the robbery, and he recognized it.
He saw Del Fiero with the motorcycle prior to the bank robbery taking place.
The man tells Seguro he saw the bike on a tow truck.
And this individual had seen another individual inside the truck with Del Fiero the day before.
Seguro thinks the tow truck driver might be the second robber. He asks the neighbor if he knows who he is. The man says he had never seen him before. The owners of the bank that was robbed tried to help, according to FBI Special Agent Mike Adams.
That very day, the bank came to us and wanted to offer a reward for information that would lead to the identity, arrest, and eventual conviction of the person or persons responsible for that armed bank robbery.
Agents hope the large reward will make people more willing to talk.
Myself, other FBI agents spent many long hours attempting to gather as much information as we could.
Investigators tracked down every possible lead, trying to get more information on Del Fiero's known associates.
We drove to several different addresses and locations in our attempt to interview different people who we thought might be able to lead to the identity as well as the location of the second suspect of this bank robbery.
Every lead becomes a dead end. Investigators finally get a break when officers begin processing the evidence left behind by the fleeing robber.
Inside the jacket was this piece of paper that had a photocopy of a driver's license that belonged to a young 16-year-old girl, and then a lot of information about who she was.
Police begin looking for the young woman.
They called the best number they had for her, which was her dad. And her dad said, well, she's at the movies. And they said, well, you need to get her. So she came and talked to the police, and she said that as soon as her dad came into the movie theater, she immediately knew what it was about.
Basically, the reason why I asked is because
they show her the photocopied license and ask how the bank robbers got it.
She told us that she was approached by a person she went to high school with. The person she went to high school with said, I have an individual that has large sums of money. He needs ID and social security numbers. In return, you'll get a couple $1,000s if you let us use your ID and social security number.
The young woman explains the information was to be used to set up bank accounts, to launder stolen money. She gives detectives the name of her high school friend, the middleman for the ID fraud.
So what is this all about?
Detectives track down the man and try to get him to cooperate.
We contacted him early morning hours. He was somewhat reluctant to talk to us at first, but then as we started talking to him, we finally started to tell us about who it was that asked him to obtain the identification and social security numbers.
His name is Aristotle.
He tells detectives the man's name is Aristotle Marr.
We then thought that it's very possible that Aristotle Marr is the person we're looking for, because he was obviously looking for a way to launder money in the hopes of getting legitimate funds in return.
Investigators are convinced they're on the right track when the middleman tells investigators that Marr owns a towing service. Police conduct a background check. DMV records reveal that there is a tow truck registered to Marr, and that it matches the one described by Del Fiero's neighbor. investigators return to Del Fiero's home to ask his old roommate if she knows Aristotle Marr. She says Marr and Del Fiero had been friends since childhood.
So now his name has come up in two different sources or two different ways during the investigation. So now we started to focus on Aristotle Marr as being the second suspect involved in the bank robbery.
Authorities check Marr's police record. It's clean, except for one assault charge he received as a minor. Tax records show Marr runs a successful towing business and already owns property worth $400,000. Police are surprised to learn he was a star athlete in high school, graduating 6 years earlier with a 4.0 grade point average.
The first thing everybody said about him was how smart he was. And you could see he had a lot of potential in life, but was impatient enough. And I think that that fed directly into the greed that motivated these crimes.
Steve Fogg subpoenas the cell phone records of Marr and Del Fiero. He discovers calls made between the two suspects prior to the robbery. Circumstantial evidence that they were possibly in the planning stages.
Danny Del Fiero and Aristotle Marr were talking, 10 times an hour in the days and weeks that preceded this.
Police then ask witnesses to confirm Marr's identity. To do this, they create a photo montage.
Typically, what happens is you have 6 photos, and the person who's the suspect is one of the 6. Here, the police put together a 12-person montage. They really went the extra mile just to make absolutely certain that we had the right guy.
Authorities show the photo montage to the woman who was assaulted and held hostage in her home.
And she didn't have any hesitation at all. She picked out Mr. Marr immediately.
Later, her husband and the carjacking victim would also pick out Marr as their attacker.
So with that, taken together with all the circumstantial evidence, we were quite confident that Aristotle Marr was the guy we were looking for.
Let's go.
Authorities secure an arrest warrant for Marr and a search warrant for his home. Knowing Marr's volatile tendencies, police prepare for what could be a violent confrontation. On June 22, 2000, a pair of alleged serial bank robbers hit another Seattle bank. During a shootout with police, one bandit is killed, and the other escapes. The dead robber is Daniel Del Fiero. Authorities believe the fugitive is Aristotle Marr. Fearing a violent confrontation, police prepare to serve arrest and search warrants with the help of a tactical unit. With the team are homicide detectives Paul Seguro and David Ritter.
When we went to the residence, we had members of the SWAT team, multiple Seattle police units to assist us in securing the premise.
Room by room, SWAT searches the house. They find no sign of Marr. Homicide detective Paul Segura.
Once the home is secured, myself and the rest of the homicide unit went in and started searching through the home.
Something real quick.
They look for any evidence that can tie Marr to the robbery or provide a clue to his whereabouts. In a hidden storage area, they find remnants of an arsenal.
Look at that. There it is. Look at that.
Detectives recover empty containers for various types of handguns.
I can reach for that, sir.
Although they do find a few weapons, most of the guns are gone.
There was different types of ammunition for long guns, shotguns. There was ammunition for handguns.
Detectives begin looking at the bullets more closely and uncover an important piece of evidence.
We found ammunition that matched ammunition that we found at the scene of the bank robbery.
Authorities also discover another lead. Documents that show frequent travel to and from Jamaica by Marr and several associates.
Also, there was small photographs and templates for the making of what appeared to be false identification.
Investigators suspect that Marr may have plans to flee the country under a false name. During the search at Marr's home, authorities discover a second house on the property.
Excuse me, Bob. We need that house cleared over there.
Agents immediately file a search warrant for the place and set up surveillance while they wait for the warrant to be processed. For a week, authorities watch people come and go, but see no sign of the robbery suspect. When a judge finally issues the warrant, SWAT goes in. What they find spins the investigation in another direction. The building is a storage unit for stolen goods.
We found numerous boxes, brand new appliances, riding lawnmowers that were brand new, refrigerators, numerous cellular phones, and just all kinds of items that were still intact, brand new, still in the box.
Investigators find packing lists still attached to the items, indicating they came from local home improvement stores.
It was obvious to us that Aristotle Marr was involved in a bigger criminal enterprise than just bank robberies.
The items were large. There were appliances, there were pallets of windows, big things, stuff that somebody doesn't go in and shoplift. I mean, these were big items and showed that there had to be some pretty sophisticated means to obtain this property. It was obvious that we needed help from our burglary and theft people. They coordinated the recovery of the property.
The Burglary and Theft Division worked with representatives from the local stores to identify more than $100,000 worth of stolen goods.
Representatives provided a big, large movie van, and all the items that were identified as being stolen or suspicious were then loaded in the back of the movie van and taken off property.
Investigators suspect that Marr must have had help obtaining and selling the items.
We believe a lot of the stolen property was sent to Jamaica. There just was some indication, some receipts, shipping receipts, etc., that showed a large amount of household goods going to Jamaica.
Authorities intensify their search for the alleged crime ringleader, Aristotle Marr. The Seattle FBI's Fugitive Task Force takes the lead. Special Agent Gary Shainline.
Well, we started with the fundamentals by contacting his family and associates in the hopes of finding that person that could give us the information that would lead to safe and swift apprehension.
But every person agents interview claims no knowledge of Marr's whereabouts. Within weeks, the search for Marr begins to take its toll on the fugitive. In an unexpected, bold move, a group of Marr supporters, including his lawyer, holds a press conference proclaiming his innocence. They charge police have falsely accused him because of his association with Daniel Del Fierro. Agents speak with lawyers about arranging surrender, but instead hear a preposterous claim.
We tried to have him turn himself in a safe manner, in a controlled environment. And they said that he was, afraid that he was going to be, killed by the local police.
Marr remains a fugitive. The FBI takes a new approach. They seek the help of a national television crime show, advertising a $25,000 reward for information leading to Marr's arrest. The tips pour in. One caller claims he's been in contact with Marr through a popular web-based instant messaging system. Agents subpoena the internet provider for details on the instant messaging account and receive transcripts of the online conversations.
Through the content of the dialogue on the instant messaging communication, it was logical to believe that one of the participants was Aristotle Marr.
The company provides agents with the address of the computer used.
We approached it with the belief that it was possible that Mark could be there at that time.
Open up.
Armed with a search warrant, they confront a man who they recognize as a known associate of Marr.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm sure, sir.
He says Marr isn't there.
No?
Agents conduct a thorough search for any evidence that could prove the fugitive had been in the apartment, but they find nothing. Agents confiscate the computer in question. They eventually determined that Marr had probably never used the computer, that it had been the associate pretending to be Marr on the instant messaging system.
You ready?
The investigator's latest lead is a dead end.
That search really didn't glean any further information regarding Aristotle's whereabouts.
The FBI continues surveillance at the houses of family and friends, but soon realize Marr may never return.
You know, unlike your garden variety bank robber, Aristotle Marr did have some financial means. He had owned property at a rental house, and I'm sure that those assets and those means, helped him in his fugitive status.
An informant calls the FBI with a tip that appears to support what agents already fear.
A confidential source indicated that he had fled under an alias, that he had not just crossed the state line, but actually had fled the country, and that he had fled to Jamaica.
If Marr has indeed left the country under another name, he might be impossible to find. The FBI is now facing their toughest obstacle in a case that appears impossible to crack. The FBI continues to hunt for bank robbery suspect Aristotle Marr. They believe he fled to Jamaica under an assumed name. But the FBI cannot simply go after him, according to Special Agent Gary Shainline.
We don't have any police authority in other countries, so there are FBI representatives and there's U.S. Marshals in Jamaica that liaise with Jamaican authorities, and I was providing them with all the information that we were gleaning from our investigation here, giving them names and points of contact, possible locations that were worthy of investigation in Jamaica in the pursuit of Marr.
Investigating Marr's whereabouts in Jamaica is difficult. He's well connected on the island and has a lot of money to help him disappear.
We're confident that through those resources that he was able to maintain a low profile and have different places to go to hide himself.
Informants report occasional sightings of the fugitive, but he eludes capture. Agents believe he is moving from house to house under cover of night, supported by a loyal group of associates. Following the leads from agents in the United States, authorities in Jamaica relentlessly pursue the fugitive. They contact every known associate of Aristotle Marr. They are uncooperative, but authorities keep them under surveillance.
It's Aristotle Marr.
Marshals were watching everything they did down in Jamaica. They made it very clear that they were not going to go away until Mr. Marr returned to the United States and answered to these charges.
In Seattle, King County Deputy Prosecutor Steve Fogg decides to file several charges against the fugitive, based on the abundance of circumstantial evidence already in hand.
We charged him with an array of counts that reflected the full nature of this crime spree. We charged him with robbery in the first degree with the firearm enhancement because he was armed when that happened. We charged him as an accomplice with Danny Del Fiero to the shooting of Officer Buxton. We charged him with attempt robbery 2, which is a formal way of saying attempted carjacking. And then kidnappings because they were essentially kidnapped and held hostage in their own basement.
Steve Fogg also suspects Marr is involved in an international theft ring, but decides not to press charges.
Mr. Marr was already looking at so much time that the amount of additional time that would be added
by, this theft ring would be negligible. I mean, you're talking about a year or two on a guy who's looking at, 30, 40, 50 years in prison. So we did not charge Mr. Marr for that.
Authorities intensify their search for Marr. Seattle homicide detective David Ritter.
We kept the pressure up.
Give me a break, please.
I mean, they felt our presence. They made several complaints that we were harassing them, but we weren't. We were conducting an investigation of a very violent crime, and we wanted to solve it. We wanted him in custody. It got the whole situation probably too hot for him. He wasn't having much fun anymore.
After 7 months, the constant pressure pays off. On February 7th, 2001, Aristotle Marr shocks police, walking into the King County Jail with his lawyer.
Go up to the counter, put your hands where I can see them.
Seattle Police Detective Paul Seguro had chased Marr from the beginning.
Sergeant Christopher, this is Tebow down at the watch desk. Aristotle Marr just turned himself in.
I was surprised that Aristotle Marr had actually taken upon himself to turn himself in. We tried to talk to Aristotle Marr, interview him about the robberies, where he'd been. He did not wish to talk about any aspects of the investigation at all.
Authorities believe he has come back to take the pressure off his associates, and because he is sure the charges will never stick.
He was quite confident, in fact, probably cocky, that this would be a case that he could beat in court. He could come back, beat this case, and kill two birds with one stone.
At his arraignment, Marr pleads not guilty to all charges.
One advantage that Mr. Marr had by fleeing was he could sit back and watch our case develop, and I had no doubt that he'd have an explanation for all the evidence, and we would have a real fight on our hands at trial.
Marr's defense team knows that lab examiners have found his fingerprints on items dropped outside the bank, including the motorcycle helmet and a pair of gloves. They explain the prints by claiming Marr lent the items to Daniel Del Fiero, the suspect killed in the shootout.
What Mr. Marr didn't know about, but we of course knew about, was this blood trail that had been left. I knew that the next step was to get an immediate sample of his blood, and I knew that that would definitely be the silver bullet if we were able to develop DNA information from the blood trail that was left.
A judge orders Marr to submit the samples, which DNA experts compare to blood found at the apartment complex and inside the kidnapped couple's house and truck. The examiner reports a match.
At that point, any concern we had about the outcome of that case definitely lifted, because it was clear that, taken together with all the other evidence that we already had, that this was a rock-solid case.
Marr decides not to risk a jury trial and changes his plea to guilty. He is sentenced to 23 years in prison with no chance of parole. Seattle police officer Wesley Buxton, shot during his confrontation with Marr and Del Fiero, is relieved that Marr finally got what he deserved.
I'm probably your typical police officer that feels that criminals should get much more than they actually get as far as the demands of justice. But I was fairly satisfied with the sentence.
Special Agent Mike Adams.
Given the high number of bank robberies we have every year, on average, well over 300 bank robberies here in the state of Washington, it's a good feeling when we can bring about, or at least help bring about, a successful conclusion to such a high-profile bank robbery investigation.
In the end, it was the combined efforts of the Seattle Police Department and the FBI that finally put Aristotle Marr out of business.